Today we're going to talk about something that might make some people mad at me. And I don't love that. Your girl is a peacemaker. If you're familiar with the Enneagram test, I am a 1 wing 9, which means that although I like to be good, I want to be good, and also I don't want conflict. I hate conflict. But y'all, this has changed my life, and so I want to share it with you. So have an open mind, please, as we discuss the really simple swap that I made that has made teaching rhythm so much better. Okay. If you're new around here, hi, I'm Becca. I'm an elementary music teacher, and apparently I'm gonna make people mad today. So, if you're here for it, you can click the subscribe button down below. I don't usually make people mad. Usually I'm pretty chill. But today we're gonna talk about something that's gonna make some people mad, because we're gonna talk about why I teach my first graders that. Let's get into it. All right, so I have been teaching for 9 years now. And in that time, I have gone all the way from my very first year of teaching, where I went to teach rhythm, and I had been kind of doing it. I'd been using like long and short, okay? And I had no idea what I was doing. And I drew a quarter note and barred eighth notes on the board. And I looked at the children, and I looked at the board, and I looked at the children, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And then we played a game instead, because I was like, I don't even know. We've come a long way to where I have gotten to the point where I know how to do, like, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. And I have been teaching rhythm for a long time. And for the longest time, I have always done rhythm by teaching ta and tt. Okay? So this is what I always did. We have one sound is ta. When we have two sounds on a beat, it's tt. That should seem easy, right? Kind of. Because here's the deal. What I found was that when I got my students older, they had the hardest time understanding that this is actually two rhythms. Or they would be like, oh, it's 2 beats. And I'm like, no, it's 2 sounds on 1 beat. And no matter what I said, it was just the hardest time. We could not understand that this was 2 sounds on 1 beat. End of story. It was so difficult. And then on top of that, if I wanted to teach anything that included that one, dotted quarter note, eighth note patterns, syncopa, any of those, they just had the hardest time because they weren't used to seeing these. So we had this problem of we don't understand that this is 2 sounds on 1 beat. We keep thinking it's 2 beats no matter what Miss Davis says. We don't know what the heck this thing is. And then the other problem that I had was that in the world, if someone is gonna like make like a music print something, a purse, a jacket, whatever, a notebook, they always put single eighth notes on them every single time. I don't know what it is about single eighth notes and treble clefs, but those are the things that they're like, oh, it's music, we're gonna put eighth notes and we're gonna put treble clefs. And usually they don't know what those are, and a lot of times they're wrong. But if you are like doing a thing, that's what's printed on everything. So the problem is that they see this all the time. And I kept having kids trying to write this, but writing this. And I kept telling them, like, you can't do that. That's not the same rhythm, but they didn't understand it. So fast forward, it's been years. I've been figuring it out. And I finally found, just the last couple of years, that if I teach them single eighth notes first, they understand it so much better. Because they understand, oh, it's 2 rhythms. They understand, oh, they share a beat. They understand those things so much better. So I posted something on Instagram the other day about this, and so many people were like, oh my gosh, I've done this and it made such a big difference. So I thought I would share it over here and we can talk through how we do it and all of that, because it's been a whole thing. And I really wish I knew this 10 years ago when I first started, because I would have been doing it this way the whole time. So let's talk about how I teach rhythm. I have a video about how to teach rhythm. It's almost the same, but I kind of inserted a step. So let's talk about it. So first of all, obviously, we're, you know, singing all the songs. We're keeping the beat. Eventually, I do like a little beat test where I'll be like, okay, is this the beat? And I'll be like, mouse, mousey, little mousey. And they're like, yeah, that's the beat. I'm like, great. Is this the beat? Mouse, mousey, little mousey. And they're like, that's not the beat, Miss Davis. I'm like, oh, great. And then I'll be like, how about this? Mouse, mousey, little mousey. And a lot of times some of them are confused. Hopefully, if I've done my job, then they'll be like, that's not the beat. But some of them will be like, but what? And I'll be like, it wasn't the beat. But listen again. And I'll do it again. And I'll be like, that kind of went, like, did it kind of go with the song? And they'll be like, yeah, that went with the song. I'm like, great. This is a thing that we call rhythm. And we have hand signs. This is beat, B for beat, R for rhythm. This is rhythm. Rhythm is the way the words go. And we have a little thing we do, mirrors up, where they repeat after me. So I'll say mirrors up. They say mirrors up. Rhythm is the way the words go. Rhythm has long and short notes. Rhythm is the way the words go. Mirrors away. And when my mirrors go away, they stop repeating. So we go through that, and then we'll go through our song. Mouse, mousey, little mousey, hurry, hurry, do. And we'll do that with different songs that we have done. And we'll just, that's it. We're just playing the beat, we're playing the rhythm. Then after a while, I'll be like, okay, so I've got the beats, and I'll put, like, usually on the board, I'll put my beats. Ta-da! And I'll be like, okay, so here's our, let's point while we sing. Mouse, mousey, little mousey. Okay, how many syllables or how many, you know, so those are the beats. This time point, but we're gonna tap the rhythm. Mouse, mousey, little mousey. How many taps? I always chicken out and I'll be like, oh, how many sounds? How many taps? How many claps? They know syllables. Just say syllables. I gotta remind myself all the time. How many syllables do I have on mouse? I'll be like, oh, one. I'm like, great. I'm gonna put one dot here. Sometimes I put it on the heart. Sometimes I do it on the board, whatever. What about mousey? And they're like, oh, it's two. And I'm like, great. And so we'll have two. And we'll keep going till we have it all the way across. Once I have all of this, then I usually will have them call them long and short, short. And so we'll do mouse, mousey, little mousey. And we'll do long, short, 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 short. And we'll go through the song doing it that way. Then, on a different day, we'll review what we did there. And then I'll have them figure out sounds on beats by using like just a heartbeat chart. And these little, I call them bingo chips. Counters is probably a better thing, but just little. Some people use mini erasers. I do have mini erasers, but y'all, the mini erasers break and it makes me mad because no matter what, like they're gonna break your mini erasers and it angers me and I don't like it. So I use either these bingo chips or if you want to spend not a ton of money, but like $10, there's acrylic vase fillers on Amazon. They make little like acrylic things that go in vases with flowers and those work really well because I have like pumpkin ones and I have snowflakes and you can get like all the different ones that are really cute for like the holidays and stuff, but they won't break because they're like plastic. And so those I like a lot, or I'll use these and then I put them in these little boxes. I have the same ones but bigger for crayons, and so this is helpful just to have that. And so we will start by going through a song. Usually I'll do 1 or 2 lines on the board together and then I'll be like, I wonder if you could figure out the next one yourself. And so they'll put the counters on the heartbeat chart so that we start figuring that out. And then I'll switch it and I'll say some patterns and I'll say, you know, long, short, short, long, short, short, and they have to make it. Then on another day, we're pulling the same stuff out again. And on that next day, they're going to make their own patterns. You know, maybe I do 1 or 2 and then after that, they make their own. I'm walking around, I'm listening to them clapping the rhythms. I'm listening to all that to make sure that we understand. Once we get to the point where I feel like we got this, we got this. Oh, and then usually I will talk about shapes with, oh, that's what it was. Okay. Sorry. I did use long and short this year because I skipped something. But what I like to do is to use shapes. And I did talk about this though, so I'll give you both ways. And so we'll use shapes on the beats. Oh gosh, now I'm making a mess. And we'll talk about the whole shape versus the half shape. And when we have half-halves, we'll do half-half. So like whole, half, 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 half. And we do a whole thing with shapes. I'll leave a video down below about that. Now, this year I skipped the shape rhythms because I just ran out of time. So here's what I did this year instead of the shapes. I'll be like, okay, when I have one sound on one beat, it's taking up that whole beat. We're calling it long because it's long. It takes up the whole beat. It takes up, I'll be like, it takes up this whole beat. Can anything else fit on there? And they're like, no. And I'm like, great. So this one is this one. And usually I call them Ta and TT, but over and over, I feel like every year I get younger with who I tell the actual names to. And so this year I was like, this is a quarter note. When we read our quarter notes, we're going to call it ta. Can you say ta? And I'm like, yeah, ta. And then I usually put 4 on the board and we read ta, 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 ta. And I'm like, great. Okay, now when we had 2 sounds, and I'll draw it kind of in here. When we have 2 sounds, then each one's kind of getting half of the beat. So we've got this one's getting half a beat and this one's getting half a beat. That's why we call them short, because they're shorter, because there's 2 of them and they're sharing a beat. We have 1 half, 2 halves, and they're like, okay, cool. Which is where the shape rhythms have made a huge difference. I actually really like that. I was kind of sad that I had to skip this year. So I'll show them this and I'll be like, okay, each one of those is one of these. This is called an eighth note. Can you say eighth note? I'm like, yeah. And then I'll be like, but wait, if my eighth note goes on half of my heart, can I only have half of a beat? And they're like, no. And I'm like, no. So we have to have 2 of them together. I heard someone at a training the other day. She said they're really scared. And so since they're really scared, they have to go together. They have to be together because they need a friend to help them be less scared. So I told them they have to go together because we can't have half of a beat. These are called eighth notes. When we read them, we're going to call each one T. So we have T, T. Together they're T, T. And then I'll put 4 of those up and we'll do T, 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 T. And then we'll switch it to other patterns. And then usually we'll switch it to, I'll show them like the whole rhythm to a new song that we're going to read. So I'll do that for a few weeks. Like I introduce it and then we'll use these shape rhythms where I like these because they're partitioned in half so that we really understand like, oh, this is half, this is half. And so I'll link that video down below. But these are really helpful. So we make different patterns with our tas and TTs, our quarter and eighth notes on our heartbeat charts. So same thing, I'll be like, okay, you know, we have TT, ta, TT, ta, and they'll make it. And then I check them. And then maybe on another day, they'll make their rhythms, but I'll have them make their own rhythms. And once I get to the point where I feel like we're understanding, then I have too many things on my board. Then I'll show them something like really ridiculous. I'll pick whatever song we have that has like the most eighth notes possible. I'm thinking like engine number 9 would be like engine number 9. Yeah. So like this is the rhythm to the first line of engine number 9. Okay, that looks crazy. But I'll put the whole thing on there. So it's like just so many eighth notes. And they'll be like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, oh, you know, I was like, that's a lot of stuff. So let's do something to make them easier to read. Since our 2 eighth notes share one beat, instead of writing them this way, we could also write them this way and take off their flags and put a beam together so that we can see that they go together on a beat. And then I'll switch it to where they're all this way and I'll be like, you know, that's so much easier to read. So when we read or write our eighth notes, we can do 2 this way or we can do 2 this way. We just have to make sure that we have 2 of them together. Either way is fine. And then I'll usually have them do stuff on the whiteboards where same thing with dictation. I'll read a rhythm, they'll write it down the whiteboard, and I tell them they can do either way. And from now on, I will accept both as correct. So that's kind of how I go through. It's pretty much the same as what I did before. The main things that I have changed are really making a big deal about how each one gets half of the heart. And then starting with this, giving them this for a couple of weeks before I switch them to the beam. And just that little switch, that like 2 weeks where we were gonna work on rhythm anyway, but I'm just showing it to them in a different way, has made a big difference. Like my older kids are already starting to be like, oh yeah, that's 2 sounds on 1 beat. Oh, so each one must get half a beat. I had one of them say that this morning and I was like, yes. And so it just makes it so much easier. They get the concept so much easier. It's so much better. They then know what this is, so they're not trying to write it in random things like they did before when they didn't know what it was. And it just overall like has made a huge difference. It's a really simple swap, but I highly, highly, highly recommend it because it really truly has made such a big difference to me. Again, it's a little more intentional. It takes maybe an extra week or two, but it makes the biggest difference. So if you are maybe struggling with rhythm, if your kids are struggling with that, try it out. Try it this year, try it next year. Either way is fine. But showing them that first has helped so much. And then just throughout the years, I'll swap, and sometimes I'll have two single eighth notes, sometimes I have them being together, and so on and so forth, just kind of, trying it out different ways. But having that really simple swap has made a big difference. So I wanted to share in case that would also help you out as well. And that's pretty much all I got. So I'll leave that shape rhythms down below where we go like super into like partitioning the shapes. It's a STEAM lesson, so I get to be like, oh look, we're doing math and music, woohoo. And so we've got all that going for us. And I will also leave the original like how I teach rhythm, which goes a little more in depth into everything other than the single eighth note version. So that's what I've got for you here today. Thanks for watching. And if you're an elementary music teacher, make sure you hit that subscribe button because you just made it to the end of the video. So you might as well. And that way, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.